You know, we have in many strong languages. If you go on the internet, from you know, Muslim Organization, Islamic Society of North America, Islamic Circle of North America, Council on American-Islamic Relations, we have. Sometimes the response was immediate, and sometimes the response was not immediate. I think I always tell people the story that when 9/11 happens, for instance, I am the leader in Oklahoma City. I was in my house. I thought I was watching a movie. By the time I need to get to my office, we were bombarded by people pointing the finger at us. We were bombarded by federal authorities questioning us, questioning our very principles, questioning our American identity. Do you know those people? Have you seen this? So there was a fear in some smaller communities, especially in Oklahoma. There was a fear, and we know from psychology when somebody's scared, their actions might not be immediate. But national organization went ahead online and in many different various groups have mentioned and condemned terrorism in all languages. But sometimes people don't seem to see that. And when people are motivated, sometimes when there's a hate factor, I call it, people seem to be not seeing things in the proper lenses. For believers, no proof is necessary. For a disbeliever, no proof is possible sometimes. But it is out there. It is out there. It's been out there from day one. And some communities did not respond immediately. For God's sake, the President of the United States did not respond immediately because he was scared and he was taken to a secret place. And to blame some of the communities for not responding immediately, we were more scared than anyone else. Actually, I always tell the people, I said, you know, we were not given the same, you know, where other fellow Americans were grieving, we did not have that feeling of grief because we were scared. Our mosque was, you know, federal authorities were at mosques. Federal leaders were visited often, questioned often. Children who were in school, you know, were asked. Wives were asked, and it continued, a pattern that continued, which we have worked through it with the federal authorities and so on and so forth. They know who we are, and we were certainly ready to help in any way and form. But there is that statement, and it came out almost immediately after any act of violence. Not only act of violence against Islam and Muslims, but even act of violence. The last, you know, Congress lady was shot, and there was also a condemnation of that violence as well.
Right. And I would say even on our website, CAIR-Oklahoma.com, on the main homepage, we have a link to document all the condemnations of terrorism and violence by the American Muslim community. It's a long list, a very long list, a huge file, PDF file. But like Imad mentioned, there are some people who ask that question without the best intention. They're asking it without doing much investigation themselves. And oftentimes we just have to sit back and think and say, wait a minute. What we're saying is that the Muslim community is inherently evil or inherently predetermined to engage in violence. So as a Muslim, prove to me that you're not. And I think that's really an unfair assumption to make. And Muslims, as people of all faiths, are not people who condone or support violence. We, just as people of other faiths, again, are peaceful and support peace and support compelling evil with good. But again, you have that underlying assumption that I think is to an extent unfair. But despite that, the Muslim community still makes its best efforts. Every time there is an act like this, the Muslim community feels compelled, whether rightful or not, to come out and condemn this violence, and we do. And we just have to consider the fact that a lot of the violence we see, whether it be on TV, not only the news, not only the media, but also many of our TV shows, our sitcoms, our movies, tend to portray Muslims in a light that suggests that Muslims are inherently violent. And the truth of the matter is that an extreme minority, a very extreme minority of Muslims, tend to earn the majority of the coverage in American media and American television. So these extreme minority ideas that does not reflect the vast majority of Muslims tends to be portrayed as a representation of what Muslims are about. So when people see something that is violent or negative about Islam, they look at the majority of Muslims who are not violent and who condemn violence and condemn terrorism and ask, well, why aren't you standing against this? And I think we just have to remember that narrative every time we hear that question. But for those who don't want to accept that narrative, again, just go to our website, CAIR-OK, and right on the main page, we have a link that goes to all the condemnations against terrorism and violence by American Muslim organizations.